Who doesn't love a good boss fight? A well-designed boss is an unforgettable encounter that sticks with you long after the rest of the game fades away. Poorly designed boss fights can have an equal and opposite reaction. They can become a stain on a game's memory. But how do you design a good boss fight? I think the easiest way is to focus on one of three roles: the boss as a test of skill, the boss as a narrative device, or the boss as a welcome change of pace mechanically. They're definitely not the only ways to make a great boss, but if you nail at least one of those points, you'll do well. Careful though, there are lots of ways to aim for those goals and still miss. So let's look at a handful of single player boss fights, some that hit their mark and some that miss it completely, and get a better feel for what it takes to make a great boss battle. Oh, and remember that this is not a best of list. These are just some informative examples of how bosses fit into their games. Let's start with a basic, no-frills, completely vanilla boss. Or 20. Mario is filled with them. Mario bosses are notorious for repeating a very similar design formula. Bowser Jr. and the Koopalings in New Super Mario Bros., Boom Boom and Pom Pom from the 3D series, the Broodals in Odyssey. They all go like this. You run around the boss, avoid some attack pattern, then hit them on the head. They'll become invincible and bounce around the arena for a bit, rinse and repeat 3 times, and you're done. Simple. Oh, and do it again later in the game when they come back for a second round, or a third, or a fourth. All of these Mario bosses fill those 3 roles of a boss in a rudimentary way. For what little story Mario games have, well, they sure are a part of it. They're a small test of skill given that they're a little tougher to beat than a normal Mario enemy. They are a change of pace as their fights turn the game from a linear obstacle course or sandbox exploration to an arena battle. Mario bosses do work as bosses on a basic level, and they are a solid introduction for people with little to no experience playing games. They're fun in their own way, but the repetitive design does get old after a while. The series does so many interesting things with nearly every level. To see them use the same basic formula for so many bosses is disappointing. Every once in a while they'll drop in a more clever boss like the Boulder Guys from Galaxy or the Mollusk Land Sewer from Odyssey. These have fun ways of testing your skills with their respective level gimmicks, but then it's right back to stomp, 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 win. We can find something a little more interesting. Oh, and a little more spoilery too. Here's your warning. So let's switch to another action series. How about Rocksteady's Arkham games? Combat in the Arkham series is great. The free-flow combat system was a fresh take on brawler mechanics. It feels so satisfying to rhythmically hit, counter, and bounce between multiple targets. But it really works best when you have groups of enemies to fight. The combat system doesn't adapt all that well to one-on-one encounters. The Arkham series has plenty of big groups of basic enemies, but boss battles are traditionally one-on-one affairs. So it's not that surprising that most of the boss fights in the original Arkham Asylum were really underwhelming. The Titan Joker fight at the end of Arkham Asylum might be the worst one. It tries to be a good narrative and final test boss fight, but doesn't do either well. The concept of a roided out Joker just doesn't fit the character. Joker as a character is all about mind games and his dynamic relationship with Batman. He's not meant to be the kind of villain that you literally just punch in the face until you win. In Arkham Asylum, he doesn't have much of a grand scheme beyond destruction. There aren't any weird moral twists or problems he introduces or forces you to choose between. You just punch him. In the face. Even as a Joker punching simulator, the fight still sucks. He just lazily swipes at you with his bony claws a few times. Run around in a circle for a few seconds and you're good. He'll jump away and send a wave of generic goons at you and toss in some easy to avoid bombs. You clear out the goons, Joker gets distracted by the evening news, and you take him down with the back claw and pow. Repeat this 2 more times and you win. That's it. That's Batman's final challenge. 3 waves of standard enemies and running around Joker a few times. As a culmination of the narrative and as a test of your accumulated skills, the Titan Joker fight falls flat on its face. Thankfully, Rocksteady did a much better job in Arkham City. Its final boss pits you against Clayface, this time set up by the Joker. It's a much better story hook, as having the Joker use other villains as part of his plan is much more in character for him. Clayface being revealed as Joker's body double is a cool surprise, and recontextualizes the story so far. He feels like a natural part of the story. The two-phase fight is pretty fun and works as a final test. In the first phase, Clayface keeps changing shape while attacking you with a variety of moves. He charges at you by rolling into a ball, he'll try to smash you from afar with his stretchy arms, he'll morph those arms into blades and slice you, he leaps at you with hammer arms, he throws wads of clay that you have to duck or leap over. You have to keep moving and stay on your toes while pelting him with ice bombs. Once you whittle his health down, he'll freeze up and you get to slice him to pieces with this sword lodged into his back. After a short scene, the second phase begins. Clayface is weakened and looks like he's falling apart. He sends waves of clay monsters that you slice up in the traditional free-flow combat style. If you break it down, this phase is actually not that different from Titan Joker. Both fights have you fighting waves of normal enemies while the villain sends out projectiles. But it works so much better for the Clayface fight because of the better story context, and the more interesting and challenging previous phase of the fight. It fits with the game's combat and works much better as an endurance battle. It's not the most amazing or difficult finale in a game, but the Clayface fight succeeds where Titan Joker failed. It's a good final challenge that has a healthy amount of variety, it uses its characters well, and it fits naturally in the story. So Rocksteady learned from their mistakes, but now let's talk about two of the greatest bosses of all time, in the same game in fact. Metal Gear Solid 3 has two standout fights against the End and the boss. The battles are designed as a midterm and a final exam for Metal Gear Solid's core stealth gameplay. Both are great fights, and for different reasons. The End for its mechanics, and the boss for its build-up and narrative. In the fight against the End, you face off against a legendary 100-year-old sniper, clinging to life just long enough to face you. You use every stealth trick in your arsenal to search for him across 3 forested areas and take him down. Think find the needle in the haystack, but the needle is packing heat. This encounter is slow and intense in a way that not many other boss fights are. MGS3 is in love with clockwork gameplay systems, and the fight against the End encourages you to find where he's hiding in creative ways. You can spot the glare from his rifle, use the directional microphone to catch the faint sound of his breathing, use the thermal goggles to keep track of him as he moves to a new sniper's nest, or you could just capture and release his pet parrot, which flies right to him. Just like the other fights in the game, you can take him down with the usual lethal and non-lethal options. You can even get unique camo for sneaking up close to him and holding him up. This fight is full of cool little details and Easter eggs. The game even gives you 2 ways to bypass the fight entirely. There's a brief window earlier in the game where you can take him out as he lingers in the environment immediately after a cutscene. Or do that 4th wall breaking trick that Kojima is known for, start the fight, save, and set the system clock forward a week. The End will die of old age the next time you start the game. Countless other games have boss fights that force you down a single path to pass them. Action games sometimes give players some flexibility in which tools they use to get through a boss fight, but the fight against the End feels more immersive, taking place in a more realistic world where lateral thinking is rewarded and you're in control of the outcome. More so than the other more straightforward boss fights in MGS3, like the Fear or the Bees. A slow, intense sniper battle is a great change of pace that rewards creativity in ways that you rarely see, outside of other series built entirely around the concept, like Hitman or Dishonored. Metal Gear Solid has other boss fights with creative latitude, but the fight with the End gives that extra unexpected degree of freedom. The sheer variety of paths you can go down makes for an unforgettable, unique encounter. The rare kind that you can tell as a story and hear the stories of other people, and share in the ways you overcame the challenge. Then we have the final battle with the boss. Mechanically, it doesn't do nearly as much as the fight with the End. The fight itself isn't that different from the game's other fights either, but narratively, it's unmatched. The fight has had an amazing build-up, spanning across the entire game. The boss taught Snake everything he knows, and naturally fights in the same way, using stealth, CQC, and gunplay. It plays a lot like a great rival fight. The game does a great job exploring Snake's relationship with the boss through their encounters, codec conversations, the way other characters talk about her, and Snake's own internal struggle with his mission to take her down. The fight is beautifully framed and plays as a somber passing of the torch between a master and her student. The game asks you to take everything you've learned and use it to surpass the boss. It's a wonderful, well-earned finale. But what if you didn't want a good finale? What if you could hijack a story, cobble together something at the last minute, and try to make a nostalgia play to make it all work out in the end? No? That sounds like a bad idea? Yeah, you're right. Who would do that? Oh. In the closing days of the Nintendo 64, Rare was making an adventure game called Dinosaur Planet. But no one knew who these characters were. This guy kinda looks like Fox McCloud, I think? So you know what? Just put the rest of Star Fox in it. And thus, Star Fox Adventures for the GameCube was born. Major characters from the original game got sidelined, levels and key story sequences were rushed or cut, and Star Fox gameplay was forced in with bad R-Wing sections. The game is fine, I guess, but the seams in the design between the original game and the Star Fox reskin are really obvious. Nothing more obvious than how the game handled its final boss encounter. So throughout the game, the main villain has been built up to be
General Scales.
He's a pretty standard big bad. Not anything crazy or unique, but the build-up is there, and he has just enough presence in the overarching story to fill the role. So you play through the game. The first half of the game was totally fine as a Zelda clone, but as you kept playing, the game felt more and more rushed. Each new area feels shorter than the last, even with lots of padding with fetch quests and awkward minigame sequences. Like they just slapped something together last minute. But hey, you're near the end. I'm sure the fight against
General Scales
will be fun. So here it is. Here we go.
Stop! Scales! You are no longer any use to me.
What? As soon as you draw your weapon, the fight ends. A cutscene plays where our main villain just gives up. Guess who is pulling the strings all along? Oh no, it's Dr. Zaius. Andros. Unbelievable. There's no build up to the twist. It happens, and then you just get in an R-Wing to replay the same final boss they had already done in 2 earlier games. It's one of the laziest, most shoehorned in final bosses that I've ever seen. This fight is bad as a test. Instead of the Zelda-like combat you had been using for the last 15 hours, you fight Andros with the R-Wing gameplay that was only in the game for maybe half an hour tops. The battle itself plays like a watered-down version of the final boss from Star Fox 64, with many of the attacks essentially being the same, except they look off. Andros' animations and model look very stiff. Hey, over here, buddy. This Andros goes beyond a callback and into shameless ripoff territory. It's a weird, unwelcome change of pace. It's a terrible narrative conclusion, and it's not much of a test. This game was a Zelda-like game at its core. The final battle would have been better in that style, not a poor imitation of Star Fox 64. That's not the game that they've been building up the player's skills and knowledge in. It's an abrupt, unfitting, and sloppy finale to a game that was split between 2 separate design docs. Bosses can be tough to design, and there are a bunch of bad boss fights to avoid, but luckily there are so many more good bosses to learn from. I know I didn't mention any of your favorites, like this one, and this one, and this one, and this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. Wow, that's a lot of good bosses. We should talk about them sometime. While you wait, how about you learn a new skill? Skillshare is an online learning community for creators, with more than 25,000 classes in graphic design, technology, and more. With Skillshare, you can learn all kinds of new skills, like how to use After Effects to make the kinds of custom animated graphics I put into every one of these videos. I've taken several Skillshare courses to improve my motion graphic design work. They're all very well done and easy to learn from. I'm forever a fan. Skillshare has teamed up with us to provide 2 free months of Skillshare Premium for the first 500 Design Doc fans that sign up with the referral link in the description below. Join more than 7 million creators learning with Skillshare. Sign up with the link in the description and learn something new. Thank you to Skillshare for supporting this episode of Design Doc.